Welcome to the Recap Roman channel, and today I'm going to tell you the story of Where the Crawdads Sing 2022. Before I start, subscribe and give it a like, it will help promote the channel. In 1969, two boys were riding their bikes and found the body of 25-year-old Chase in a swamp. The guy died from falling off the tower, but there were no traces or even fingerprints on it. The only trace was red wool on his clothes. The locals don't believe he did it himself and are all convinced it was a swamp woman. The police went to her house but couldn't find her. They broke into her house and found a red wool hat as evidence. At this time, a swamp woman named Kaya was hiding in the woods. After a few days, they managed to catch her in the woods. After a while, the lawyer Milton comes to see her. He wants to help her because everyone in town thinks she is crazy. He says that he can't help her in court if she doesn't tell about her life. She decides to trust him and tell him everything. Back in the day, she lived with her family. Everyone loved her except her father. He had a drinking problem that caused him to constantly beat his family. One day her friend Tate stood up for her and her father was furious. All night long she heard her father beating her mother. After a while her mother couldn't take it anymore and left her family. After another month, her siblings left from her father's abuse. The youngest brother, named Jody, was the worst of all. He advised the girl to hide in the swamp where the crayfish sing. Kaya tells the lawyer that she learned to live with her father and just tried to stay out of his sight, and that she spent all her free time outdoors. One day she got lost and her friend Tate helped her out again. She also remembers going hungry every day. Her father took her to the store and bought her some cereal and a couple of bottles for himself. The shopkeepers knew how hard it was for her. They gave her sweets and advised her to go to school. The next day she decided to go to school. She went to town barefoot. From every corner she heard about her appearance and how bad she was. That's when she met Milton's lawyer for the first time. The man supported her and she came to school, but her classmates made fun of her for her appearance and not being literate. She admitted that it was her first and last day at school. After a while the father was able to love his daughter, but a letter came from the mother and the man in a rage burned the letter and all his wife's things. The next morning the father disappeared and the girl was left alone. In order to survive, she spent all day collecting mussels and selling them in the store. The woman helped her with clothes, taught her how to count, and even sent her a dress to the prison. At her first trial, she was accused of murder. Then Milton offered to make a plea bargain and admit that the murder was manslaughter and get 5 to 10 years instead of the death penalty. However, she decided to refuse the deal. She recalls how one day in the woods she met a stranger who left her food and seeds. But one day they did meet and it turned out to be Tate. Even though she was afraid of people, they were able to find a common language. They had a great time and later she taught her to read and write. She was an easy learner, so after a while she easily mastered the school program. She confessed to him that the child welfare authorities couldn't find her for years and Jim and Mia lied to them because Kaya didn't want to live among people. He supported her and afterwards they kissed. But the happy days flew by and the girl found out that Tate had entered a biological university in another city. She asked him to stay, but he didn't want to live in the swamp because there were no prospects here. At parting, he gave her a list of publishing houses that might be interested in her work. They said goodbye and Kaya continued to study rare birds and insects in the swamp. It was the 4th of July, the day Tate had promised to visit her. This day was special to her. She took her best dress, put on makeup and waited for him on the beach. But Tate never came. She experienced the worst feelings about it, but she was saved by nature again. She decided not to waste any more time selling mussels and send her artwork wherever Tate advised. The second trial comes up and Milton brings in irrefutable forensic evidence. He says Chase died in an accident. That's when she remembers how she met him. Chase was courting her, but the girl didn't sense any sincerity in him. On their first date, she found a seashell and knew its name and origin, which made Chase laugh. He says he's surprised at the knowledge of a girl who lives in a swamp. After a couple hours he decides he can have it all at once, but the girl didn't think so. Chase decided to make it up to her and took her to a tower where he had a bird's eye view of the swamp. After that, they spent a lot of time together. Even though Kaya loved Tate, at least she wasn't lonely. The girl gave him a seashell she'd found on their first date. In return, Chase professed his love and promised to marry her. Her memories are interrupted to find out where the shell disappeared from Chase's body. The mother accuses the girl of killing her son, but even here the lawyer puts everything in its place. He reminds her that the shell was not found during the search of the cabin. She continues to reminisce about the past. It seemed that her life was getting better. A new acquaintance, a publisher, wants to publish her research. But one day Tate returned and saw the happy couple. A few days later, Tate overheard Chase discussing his nights with the girl. He stood up for the girl's honor and Jim managed to stop the fight. That same night, he came to see her, but she met him in a rage. She hated him with all her heart for his betrayal. He asked for her forgiveness because he knew she wouldn't want to leave the swamp and he had to choose between her and everything else. He says he made a terrible mistake and that he's ready to make things right. He even found a job near the city. But Kaya couldn't forgive him. The next day they come into town and meet Chase. She says she wanted to give him a romantic dinner. But suddenly his friends come over and one of them introduces herself as his fiancée and it breaks her heart. Hours later he arrives at her place but she had no desire to see him. After weeks of dreadful condition she is happy to see the first copies of her books and the first income from sales. She made repairs and brought light into her cabin on the swamp. After a while Jody's brother showed up on the doorstep. He knows nothing about the sisters, but he knows that their mother died of an illness. In that letter she asked their father to give the children to her, but he threatened to kill her if she didn't disappear. Jody says he's sorry they have such a family and asked permission to visit her, and she's happy to do so. The next day during biology research, Chase finally found her. She is unable to forgive the betrayal, but he is not used to getting rejected and beat her and also wanted to take advantage of her. But luckily she managed to get away. The girl promised to kill him if he came near her and the fisherman heard it and told everything at the trial. From then on she lived in fear and hid in the woods for a week and when she returned she found the house in chaos. Soon Tate came to see her and immediately noticed the blows on her face. And he realized Chase had done it. She wanted to go to a neighboring town to sign a contract with publishers. But because of the bruises, she couldn't make up her mind. Tate supported her and told her not to deny herself a better future. Since it was cold, he gave her his red hat. The next day she went to Jim's house to get the bus schedule. He is worried about her and tells her to go to the police, but she is afraid to go because of Chase's connections. At the trial, the woman says that Kaya left town the day before the murder. The prosecution is confident that she came back at night, killed him and left town again. In response, her lawyer says he checked the bus schedule and there's no way she could have cleaned up all the evidence and driven back there in just a few hours. They have no evidence. Only red wool on Chase's clothes and Milton reminds them that the pair had intimacy and that doesn't prove her guilt. In the end, the jury finds the girl not guilty and she thanks her lawyer and Jim and Mia who supported her. After a while Tate and Kaya married. They devoted their lives to biological research and they published many books. When Kaya died of old age, Tate found his wife's diary where he read an article about the Mandas and Chase. At that moment he realizes that Kaya killed Chase and this secret will keep the place where the crayfish sing. And that's all. If you liked the video, then put a like. Subscribe to the channel because it helps to promote the video. With you as Recap Roman and bye.